When my daughter Emily told me her new family didn't need me anymore, I didn't argue. I just smiled, the kind of smile that hides 1,000 cracks. It was early December. The air smelled of pine and cold wind. I stood on her front porch holding a wrapped gift, a small wooden music box I'd made myself. Inside, it played the same tune I used to hum when she was little, when she couldn't sleep after her mother passed. But that night, she didn't even open it. She just stood there, arms crossed, wearing a red sweater that looked expensive, not her taste. And behind her stood Michael, her husband, with that polite smile of someone who thinks he's already won. "Dad," she said softly, "we just want a simpler Christmas this year. Michael's parents are coming. It'll be a family thing."
A family thing. I looked past her shoulder.
The house glowed with new decorations, perfectly arranged lights, silver ribbons, and a giant wreath that looked straight out of a magazine. Everything looked cold.
Perfect but cold. I nodded. Of course.
"You have your own family now." She hesitated for a second, maybe expecting me to argue, but I didn't. I just handed her the box. "A little something," I said quietly. "For your first Christmas as a family."
She didn't take it. Michael did.
"We'll open it later," he said, with that tone that sounds friendly but means you can go now.
So, I did.
As I walked back to my truck, snow began to fall, small flakes landing on the windshield like little reminders of how silent pain can be. I sat there for a while, watching their perfect house glow brighter in the night. She had once said, "Dad, you're my only family." Now she said, "We don't need you anymore." But what she didn't know, what Michael certainly didn't know, was that the man they dismissed so easily once built that very house with his own hands. And when the lights went out, they'd remember who really kept their world shining. I'm David Collins, retired electrician, widower, and until recently, a father who believed love was enough. For 30 years I worked for the same small-town power company in Maplewood, a quiet suburb about 40 minutes outside of Boston. I wired most of the homes there myself.
People trusted me.
They'd say, "If David built it, it'll last forever." That's how I met Michael, long before he became my son-in-law. Back then, he was just another young man buying one of the new houses I helped wire. I remembered him because he complained about every little thing. Said the kitchen lights were too dim, the switches too old-fashioned. I fixed what I could, smiled politely, and left. When Emily told me years later that she was dating a man named Michael Turner, I didn't think much of it.
Until I met him. Same face.
Same arrogance.
Still, I kept quiet.
She loved him, and that was enough for me.
Or so I told myself.
After her mother passed, Emily became my whole world. We had our Christmas traditions, baking cookies, setting up the old tree with the wooden star I carved when she was 6. Every year, we'd watch It's a Wonderful Life together. She'd cry every time George Bailey hugged his family. But after she married Michael, things changed fast. The first Christmas after their wedding, I was still invited, but it felt different. Michael's parents came too, and they took over the kitchen like generals in a war zone. Emily was trying to balance everyone, smiling nervously, and I could see she was exhausted. By the second Christmas, they hosted everything at their new home, the one Michael had bought, the one I had wired 15 years earlier. That year, my invitation arrived late. This year, there was no invitation at all. Just that doorstep conversation. Still, I didn't get angry. I didn't even call her afterward. I just went home, made myself a cup of tea, and sat by the window watching the snow pile up on the porch. Loneliness is a strange thing. It doesn't always roar, sometimes it just hums quietly, like an old fridge in the corner. But that night, as I looked at my old toolbox, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, not anger but purpose. Because I knew something Emily didn't. Michael had always been too proud to learn about the electrical panel I installed when he bought that house. And that perfect home of his? It still ran through my old work I maintained every winter before they stopped calling me. They wanted a simpler Christmas.
All right.
I'd give them one.
A silent one.
In the days that followed, I went about my life as usual, or at least that's what I let them think.
Emily didn't call.
Neither did Michael. But through a few old neighbors, I heard all about their Christmas plans, how Michael's parents were flying in from Florida, how he was bragging about the smart home upgrades he'd installed. The same man who once couldn't change a fuse now had a house full of Wi-Fi controlled lights. One of my old coworkers, Ben, laughed when I told him. You think he even knows where his breaker panel is?
I shook my head. No idea. We both chuckled.
But deep down, I knew what I wanted to do. Not to hurt them, never that. But to remind them. Remind them of who kept their world bright all these years. So I went back to that house one afternoon under the pretense of dropping off a small package. I knew Emily and Michael were both at work. I left the box by the door and walked around the side where the electric meter was. I had built that circuit with a unique system, something most electricians wouldn't even notice today. A small safety feature I designed myself, so I could easily cut power to the house externally in an emergency. Back then, I called it the angel switch. It was meant to protect families. That day, it would teach one a lesson.
Christmas Eve came.
The entire neighborhood glowed with color, red, green, gold, white, except for one house that would soon turn darker than the night sky. At 6:45 p.m., I parked 2 streets over, walked quietly through the light snow, and stood across from their home. Through the window, I saw laughter. Emily, Michael, and his parents around a long dining table, candles lit, wine glasses raised.
I took a deep breath.
Then, with a gentle twist of my wrist, I flipped the small hidden lever behind the meter box. And just like that, everything went dark. I could hear the surprised shouts even from across the street.
What the?
Michael's voice echoed. The street stayed lit, every other house glowing, except theirs.
I waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10.
I could see Michael outside, flashlight in hand, looking completely lost as he opened the panel door. He was shaking his head, probably cursing under his breath. He had no idea what went wrong. Inside, Emily was lighting candles, her mother-in-law fanning the smoke alarm that wouldn't stop beeping from the kitchen.
I didn't laugh.
I just stood there, letting the cold air sting my face. It wasn't revenge, it was revelation. Then I walked away. It took them 2 hours to get a technician. But since it was Christmas Eve, no one came. I stayed home, listening to soft Christmas music, sipping hot cocoa like I used to with Emily.
Then, around midnight, my phone buzzed. A number I knew by heart. Dad. Her voice trembled. The power's out. We can't fix it.
Michael tried everything. Can you help? I paused for a moment, pretending to think. I thought you didn't need me anymore.
There was silence. Then a quiet sigh. Please, Dad.
I put on my coat, grabbed my toolbox, and drove over. When I arrived, the house was cold and dim, lit only by flickering candles. Everyone looked miserable, even Michael, whose proud face now looked pale and defeated. He muttered something like, "Sorry for the trouble, Mr. Collins."
I nodded.
Let's see what we've got. I went out back, flipped open the panel door, and fixed the switch in less than 2 minutes. The lights flickered on, one by one. The Christmas tree, the fireplace lights, the kitchen glow. Inside, Emily smiled in relief.
You did it. I shrugged. Old habit.
Michael's father patted my back. You saved Christmas, sir.
But I didn't answer.
I just looked at Emily. Her eyes said more than words could. Later, as I was about to leave, she stopped me at the door. Dad, she said softly, why didn't you get angry when I said those things? I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said, because I knew someday, life would remind you who stood in the dark with you.
Her eyes welled up.
I'm sorry.
I know, I said.
Now you know what family really means.
5. Resolution, justice and understanding.
is almost equal to 1,000 words. After that night, something changed. Emily started visiting again, first with small excuses. I baked too many cookies, or Dad, can you look at my car battery?
Then slowly, she came just to talk.
Michael came too, quieter this time, more respectful. I never mentioned the blackout, and neither did he. But I could see it in his eyes, he knew. By spring, Emily invited me back for Sunday dinners. The house felt warmer, more real. Less perfect. She'd laugh again, the way she used to as a little girl, sitting at the kitchen counter while I cooked. And one evening, as we sat watching the sunset, she said, "That night when the lights went out, I realized how empty everything looked without you here. I thought I had everything, but I didn't."
I just smiled.
Sometimes you need a little darkness to appreciate who brings the light. It's been 3 years since that Christmas. Now, every December, Emily insists I put up the lights myself. She says no one does it like me. Michael and I even work side by side now, not as rivals but as family. He still doesn't understand electricity much, but at least he tries. Sometimes, as I watch them decorate their home, laughter, warmth, music, I think about that cold night when everything went dark. And I realize that revenge doesn't always have to hurt. Sometimes, it just has to teach. I never told Emily about the angel switch. I never told her that I stood across the street that night, watching. Some things are better left as quiet lessons between a father, a daughter, and the light that came back on. Because love isn't about being needed, it's about being remembered when the world goes dark. So, when people ask me if I ever got back at them, I just smile and say, "No. I just reminded them where their light came from."
And that's the truth.
Because sometimes, silence is the best revenge.